Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Kim, aka the Booker Harlot, because I love all things Booker Prize related. So the Booker shortlist has been announced, and I'm sure you all know that. And I am working my way through the shortlist, and my second to last book of the shortlist to read is Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. And I am excited for this one. This seems to be a love or hate book, and I'm really hoping that I love this. She was born in Montreal in Canada, in which I am a Canadian as well, and then she immigrated to Scotland. So while I am reading, I will leave you with some clips of my life in rural Eastern Ontario with Ripley the dog and some walks and Wednesday the cat. So see you soon. Come on, let's go home. Ripley, hang on. Be safe, you come home. Okay? Alright. So I'm about halfway through Study for Obedience. And let's start with the cover. I have such a pet peeve about having dead animals on the cover and the back of books. This does not appeal to me. If I was in a bookstore, I would not gravitate towards this book. Anyways, that's another thing. I bought this book because it made the Booker Prize, long list and short list. So this book is told in 7 chapters. And like Western Lane by Chetna Maru, I had to start this book over. With both books, I realized I was halfway through and I was not quite understanding what was going on. And I think that this is the controversy over the Booker this year. And I'm fine with that. I am fine with books that challenge me and books that I have to go back and reread in order to appreciate. I know that these books were chosen for a reason, and that somewhere in here, even if I have to read it a couple of times, I will find magic. So, yet again, I'm going to say you need to read this book very, very slowly, like most of the books on the short list and some of them from the long list. So this is told in the first person by an unnamed narrator. In fact, no one in this book has a name. There are she refers to her brother and the townspeople and a woman, but that is the extent to which characters are named. Now, the narrator has left her life to move to a remote northern country. And another lack of things, like Western Lane too, I keep finding similarities between the two of them. There is a lack of so much in this book. So a lack of names, there's also a lack of dialogue. So there is no language. The brother leaves, so there's very few conversations with him because there's no opportunity. And she doesn't speak the language of the community, even though she states in the first couple of chapters that she once knew 4 different languages and that her brother has mastered the dialogue. But she can't communicate with anyone, and no one seems willing to communicate with her. Also, she works as a transcriber, so she listens to audio and types it up. And she slowly, the more time she spends in this remote northern country, she loses that ability as well. So language is just failing on all fronts for her. And I think that Sarah Bernstein does this so beautifully, in that all these other themes, or this one theme, is evolving on all these different levels. And I really appreciate that. Now, in terms of her relationship with her brother, I think that there's a couple scenes where it was creepy and I thought it was a little incestuous. There's a moment in which she talks about taking care of him and how much she liked to dress him. It's too intimate for a brother-sister relationship. Another theme is the power of relationships and how they can repress people, particularly women. Now, there is an interesting couple of sentences on page 24 where she talks about her early relationship with her brother. And she says, "He took me under his wing. I became his pupil and his retainer, and he made me understand the necessity of temperance and silence. I had made an essential error when organizing my consciousness early on in life," my brother explained. "And this was by entertaining the idea that it is reasonable for me to form my own judgments about the world, about the people in it." And that is the resounding conviction that this narrator has. There are certainly themes of displacement that evolves on all sorts of levels, just like the power of relationships, like the theme of language and its importance and their lack of. Um, it's about being uprooted and knowing that there's no way that you can fit in. It is also a meditation on power, the power that men have over women, and the power of yourself or lack of it. Now, one thing about Sarah Bernstein is she has an incredible vocabulary. Be prepared to read this with a dictionary. I had to look up quite a few words, and ironically, a couple of the words that I looked up were all about the loss of speech and the loss of language and the paralysis of the face and vocal cords. Um, Another thing that I think is really interesting about this book is that it is highly claustrophobic. There is only one character, and she is having an eternal dialogue in the first person, which when you read you sort of overlay that onto yourself. And the main character is highly uncomfortable. She's uncomfortable with her environment. She's uncomfortable with her skin. She's uncomfortable with the lack of relationships and the relationships that she wants or thinks that she wants. Um, she is someone who doesn't know herself, and she is agitated, she's uncomfortable, and she can't communicate this to anyone, let alone herself. And her desire is to please her absent brother. And she feels that she has to earn her happiness by being obedient. So I'm finding this really, really intriguing, but I do understand why a lot of people would DNF it or just not want to read it. But I think that if you take your time with it and you read very, very slowly and you look up a hell of a lot of words, that this could be a really good read. So I'm going to keep reading, and I will leave you with little clips of Ripley and Wednesday and Life on the Lake. There's my good girl. All right, let's go for a walk. Come on, let's go for a walk. Come on, honey. So I finished Study for Obedience, and before I get started on what I think of the book, I thought I would just share something that I think is so Canadian in the fact that it is the end of October and it is 22 degrees outside, which it's unseasonable. These things happen, but I can literally go be outside in a summer dress and be very, very comfortable. The ironic and very Canadian thing is that in about 36 hours, there's a prediction for snow. And I think this is why Canadians are so obsessed with weather. It's because we have an extreme 4 seasons and that things can take a 30-degree turn in temperature within 24 or 36 hours. Anyways, it amuses me to no end. I think it's funny. And it's just, I love the changing of seasons. It just thrills me. If you're hearing noise, that's Wednesday trying to get in the cupboard behind me. All right, so I finished this. Now, it takes, there's no spoilers in this, but more than halfway through, you just begin to discover what the township think of this unnamed narrator. And she begins to think that the town is against her because there's a series of very inexplicable and unfortunate events that seem to happen to the animals in the town. Now, she is very much at this point an unreliable narrator, and she is absolutely a character who lives in her head. And I'll just read for you an example of this in page 133 if you have this edition with the dead bird on top of it. She says, I have always been susceptible to the desires of other people. Any strong feeling experienced in close proximity to me, I reflected like the still surface of a pond at dawn, fathomless, untenuated, so often coming to live these feelings as though they were my own. In the case of the townspeople, although they kept their physical distance, so powerful was the sentiment, so critical the mass, that at times I was overcome. It worked on me, and I lay down on the ground on the floor of the barn. So beautifully written. Um, and the writing to me feels very Victorian. Even though you're not in Victorian times, you don't know exactly what time period this is, but it's a modern one because there's a cell phone, there's email, she does dictation, transcripts dictation. Um, but there is something very Victorian in the very long sentences and the elevated language and the heaviness to it. But I'm absolutely astounded by the beauty of this novel. And yet again, this is another one of those books that I really think is meant to be reread and reread, and you could glean something different from every rereading of this. And I absolutely love how Sarah plays with the theme of languages and lack of languages and the power of languages and the sense of self and self-importance and how that is weaved into language itself. She really plays with the theme of displacement in terms of location, but also the displacement of community and displacement in terms of the lack of self-awareness. She really, really works at power and the power of language, but also the power of silence, but also the submissiveness that silence can bring. Anyways, I'm really, really impressed with this. I am so glad that I read it because I never would have read this book if it hadn't been for the Booker Prize. Now, if anything, if I had to put a genre, other than, of course, most things on the book are listed as literary fiction, but if anything, I would put the genre of horror on this. And I can see why people would compare her to Shirley Jackson. Now, if you are a fan of Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh, which was longlisted for the Women's Prize earlier this year, I think that you would like Study for Obedience. As well, it gives me vibes of Pew by Catherine Lacey. Now, in terms of if I were to rate the Booker long list, in terms of all the books that I have read, I would certainly keep The Bee Sting by Paul Murray in number one. In number two, I would put Old God's Time by Sebastian Barry. And in number three, I would actually put Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. This Other Eden by Paul Harding would stay at number 6. And number 12, If I Survive You by Jonathan Escroffrey. And number 13, In Ascension by Martin MacInnes. So that's my thoughts on Study for Obedience. I will continue to go through, I have one more book to read from the shortlist, which is Prophet Lane by Paul Lynch. And then I will continue to read through the long list. As well, I have a video coming up on Tuesday, which is Halloween, October 31st. I've spent the past 3 weeks reading horror novels and doing a little, it's not so much spooky, but it's kind of a cozy autumnal vlog. So I hope you join me for that on Tuesday. And please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel out. I have linked all of my individual Booker videos in the description box below. And thank you so much for spending your time with me. I hope you leave your comments and your thoughts. Let me know if you're going to read for Study for Obedience. If anything I said changed your mind, I would love to hear from you. So thanks again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.